Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and join me as I talk to everyday people with not-so-everyday experiences. Let's talk near death.
Approximately 40% of individuals who have cardiac arrests and are resuscitated have an NDE. And what is most interesting is that via these different kinds of experiences, people change positively. A peak experience is pretty cool, but it's not all roses the whole way. Why do individuals who are blind from birth or severely disabled in terms of visibility report being able to see during their NDE?
Today I'm joined by Dr. Bob Davis. Bob is a retired professor of neuroscience with years of research into near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, meditation, and the mind-brain relationship after death. He's recently released his latest book, which is Unseen Forces, the integration of science, reality, and you. And today I'm excited to have Bob to join me on the show. So Bob, welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit, you're studying these experiences. Tell us a little bit about how you got into that and some of the research that started to come out from your work.
Well, I'm a neuroscientist, as you mentioned. Thus, I'm uniquely curious, obviously, about the operations of the brain. And when we talk about the near-death experience, we're talking about an extraordinarily profound event. We call it a spiritual, mystical experience that millions of people, 200 million, in fact, in the United States alone, have an NDE. It's well established. The medical community agrees that this extraordinary experience does occur. And obviously many theories exist to try to explain it. So there was a natural interest in the NDE and the out-of-body experience, among other types of, shall we call them, peak experiences, to the point where when I had a sheer death experience, and if I may take a moment, during a dream state, I sensed the feeling of being suffocated. I couldn't breathe. And it was so dramatic that it obviously woke me up out of fear. But along with that sense of suffocation, I knew my friend had passed. I had a knowingness. It was her who was suffocating. Later to find out that of course, that day, at that time, she had passed. Now, is it a coincidence? No, obviously, you can't prove it. If it's a coincidence, it's a long one, but you can't rule it out. The point is, when you put the pieces to the puzzle, I couldn't help but not write a book that attempts to integrate aspects of spirituality, these kinds of peak experiences, and some scientific theories, especially aspects of brain function that might potentially explain them, or how it may contribute to them in some way.
Quite often we hear, when people have a near-death experience, we hear things like, well, it was just the lights shining on them and, you know, the operating room, that they couldn't really have seen what they'd seen. They were just in a dream state. They weren't quite with what was going on. What has your research shown about these explanations?
Well, the research shows a great deal of discrepancy, and there's no uniform opinion about exactly what people are experiencing. In other words, are individuals who are clinically dead, then resuscitated, then tell a story about, yes, the white light, the movement at will towards some kind of barrier where they interact with the supreme being, deceased relatives, they communicate telepathically, they feel love. There's many aspects that are very similar. The question is all this, when they retell this story, are they, in other words, seeing a different world indeed, or are they still seeing this world differently? I think those who have this experience want to know that initially. You know, why me? What happened to me? Am I having a delusion? A symptom of psychosis? Do I need attention, help? Many do seek help. But the thing is, we don't know exactly what it is. And that's why we get different conflicting reports. Now, but what everybody in research wants to find out is whether or not we have a true veridical perception, meaning that once an individual reports to leave their body, perceive their body from a standpoint above, and possibly experiences other events occurring remote from that room, so that the body, in a sense, could not know what is going on elsewhere. And there have been some studies trying to obtain veridical perception. And there are, you come up with some results like 1% to 2% out of 3,000 people in one study, were found to have a type of accurate report that the body, in other words, could not have known. This is theoretically possible, even though the person has flatlined and is clinically dead. You can't rule out the remote possibility they are still perceiving auditory information in the room and actually making sense of it, at least memorizing it and retrieving it later. So when it's remote, of course, it's inconceivable that the person would know. You get these anecdotal stories that are remarkable, that indicate that, the only way the person would have known is if they were there in the other room to observe it. Rare in occurrence, very rare in occurrence, but that's the primary issue. There are certainly many others.
Yeah, and you talk about these experiences that people have. There's some similarities throughout them. So, for example, the white light, seeing people who have passed already, maybe relatives or people that they were close to. There's often reports of music and this warmth and this love and all of these different aspects. What are some of the things that you've seen in your research which maybe people don't have so regularly?
Well, we're seeing that people are reporting normal levels of alertness during their NDEs. We're seeing the possibility of brain activity that may be going on, emanating from the brain in the form of biophotons, even though there is a flat line. In other words, that is a debatable issue. What is clinical death? And that interacts with this unique phenomena. We're also very curious about why children, ages 5, 4, have the same kinds of subjective reports about their NDE as older children and adults. So there's certainly some aspect of unique reports that suggest that the NDE is valid. If kids who are not informed of what the NDE is, and yet they meet and interact with deceased relatives and supreme beings and experience the symptoms you mentioned, I'm sure just about everybody in the audience is very familiar with the diverse range of symptoms. Many are more similar in occurrence than others, like the white light, interaction with other individuals, alterations in time and space. Yes, in the profound sense of love and the realization that they're not their body, resulting in a greater increase in spirituality once they do eventually return to their body. The other thing too is that we have seen that about 90% of those NDE reports can obtain no errors in some studies, which have been replicated by Penny Sartori, who I think you and your audience certainly are familiar with. And why do individuals who are blind from birth or severely disabled in terms of visibility report being able to see during their NDE? That is an aspect of great curiosity. So we see these kinds of nuances in the subjective reports that suggest more the validity of the NDE being a non-brain or not entirely the brain event, as if some aspect of consciousness, soul, I, is somehow taking over, assuming more command or role. Possibly even entering another alternate reality. I'm not going to dismiss that. I think science must look at things more out of the box, look at things with less of a Newtonian perspective. Classical physics is wonderful in the sense that it has served us extremely well over many, many decades. But we need to incorporate more of the subjective experience in terms of defining what reality is. And when so many millions of people are coming up with these similar reports and the unique features of them, like in the blind, like vertical perception, if that is indeed valid, and all you need is one case. And there are examples of one case in the literature, which is, the point is, the scientific method still doesn't adopt the NDE as 100% valid, meaning person is crossing over, piercing the veil to wherever, to whoever, why ever. all those questions we ask.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about why these happen, so you're questioning who has them, why do they have them. Is there any kind of understanding around that? Like, who, you hear of so many people who have experiences where they flatline or their brain activity stops, and yet they come back and they say they haven't had any kind of experience. So what defines who has them and why they have them? And did you have any understanding around why people do have these experiences?
It's a very good question. It has not been explored greatly. There is some evidence, however, suggesting that people who are more, shall we say, have a tendency to fantasy proneness are more likely to have NDEs. That has not at all been substantiated. You're going to get all different kinds of opinions, and you and your audience can even come up with them, People, however, there is one tendency that shows approximately 40% of individuals who have cardiac arrests and are resuscitated have an NDE, and it seems to be a higher incidence. But you see it in a wide range of age, as we mentioned, and it's just the thing is this, with the advancements in resuscitation techniques over the past few decades, people are so to speak, living longer during their flatlines, and we can preserve bodily function for a longer period of time, allowing more time to resuscitate the individual back to life. And in doing so, we see an associated increase in these NDE incidents. So it is certainly related to the length of time or the types of brain states that the individual is going through at that time. And apparently these individuals are certainly on the brink of death, but they are not dead. They can't be truly, truly dead because they were resuscitated. Low-level functioning, and brain could certainly, understandably, become chaotic in so many different ways and unpredictable ways. We don't know what kinds of illusions or visual images may be portrayed, auditory and otherwise. We have no real clue other than it's confusing, and the person is likely not conscious of anything, given the state of the EEG, electrical activity, and other aspects of the brain. Yeah, how can the person really be aware of anything? But that's a good guess, but we have to rely on the subjective report. And again, the area of major research in terms of where it needs to go is just that. Getting much more relevant information of the essence of the experience, not only in those who have an NDE, but also in an OBE. And an out-of-body experience is often symptomatic of an NDE, but it also can exist alone, not associated with an NDE. And OBEs occur in about 80% of NDE cases. Many of your listeners have just, I'm sure, have had an OBE. And that's what we're talking about here. But not only that, individuals who have psychoactive drug-like experiences through DMT or dimethyltryptamine, known as ayahuasca, LSD, psilocybin, even individuals who interact with UFOs. And I'm getting off on a little tangent here for a second.
It's okay.
I don't want to go into great detail NDEs, but we have a broader spectrum of phenomena, as I mentioned, where we have altered states of consciousness being induced by different types of, you call it peak experience triggers. That's what I call it in my book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality, and You, which I just published. And if I may say, we're seeing similar kinds of symptoms, experiences that people are reporting despite the different kinds of interactions. There are unique features to each one, of course, but why do people always report meeting deceased relatives or non-human entities of varying types? Common expression reported by those who have these kinds of experiences. Why do they report altered time and space as if there's no 3D reality? As if they no time, no space. And that's another common feature of those who have an NDE. You've heard that. No time, no space, the past, present, future exist simultaneously.
Yeah, exactly.
Behavior we see at the subatomic level, which sparks a lot of curiosity among physicists and other scientists, thinking that maybe that we're getting hints from the behavior, enigmatic behavior of subatomic particles like light energy, neutrons, photons, electrons, etc. So maybe the past, present, future don't exist simultaneously in an altered reality. We can only speculate, but there's reason to do so, and maybe it's more fun than anything else because science is a little consistent with the subjective report. You see, we see this kind of unique correspondence, and why do we see it with these different events? There's an altered state of consciousness that somehow creates a non-3D environment, and people experience a unitive experience, an ego dissolution. They realize that the external world is more important than themselves, as they always have, however, in reverse. Our ego is so large, we think, we're right, not walk on water, but we're the center of attention. Some people also know this, obviously, and but that's a nice humane quality. And what is most interesting is that via these different kinds of experiences, people change positively in psychosocial ways that are generally very good, not only for the individual, but also for the family. However, I say that with an asterisk. The divorce rate, you may know where I'm going, the divorce rate is exceedingly high in those who in one individual, one spouse who has an NDE, emphasizing the point that they do change quite dramatically, enough so that it is interfering with the interaction quality of the relationship. So, my husband is more, or my wife is more, following the NDE, more spiritual. I'm into ESP, hangs out with different people, shows too much compassion and affection, talks about love too much, and just different. Little spiritual, but not necessarily bad.
Exactly.
But just different.
I mean, I think they've been through such a transformative experience. They are so challenging, and they challenge everything that you can think about and the way that we live life outside of that experience. So it's kind of obvious that changes would happen along the way. Do you think that, is it fair to say that an OBE, an out-of-body experience, and the NDE are very, very similar without the clinical death?
I think they're one and the same. One and the same, but there are some differences because there's some different types of OBEs, and some are indeed purely physiological, but they're different than the non-physiologic. They're different than the OBEs that people report when they're having a near-death experience. The point, it's really not, I should say, that similar. You can tickle, in other words, a part of the brain with electrical current, and the person's going to have a floating sensation that may be interpreted as an OBE. We don't even know what the best criteria to use to define what an OBE is. We really don't. We have some criteria, the Grayson scale for NDEs. We mentioned them all just about in our discussion prior. So with OBEs, it can be an out-of-body-like sensation can be induced. That's the point. And when people lose the ability to distinguish their external world from their internal world. That can create a disorientation. It's hard to imagine that, of course, but it's not surprising. I could see certainly that happening. And there are parts in the brain that are important to allow that kind of discrimination to take place. And it's important to do so. You lose that function, and you might have a so-called, unitive experience that is a hallmark of the peak experience or the mystical experience, the ego dissolution that we are alluding to. I'm egoless, and with that theme, with that main behavioral attribute, a lot of symptoms that are good in nature flow out, evolve from. So a peak experience is pretty cool, but it's not all roses the whole way. There are roadblocks. There are spiritual emergencies that people experience. And I'm sure some heads are nodding in the audience because they know what spiritual emergencies are all about. When they have any one of these experiences, it's got to, I hate to use the expression, knock your socks off. It gets your attention. The world is different from that moment forward. What the heck happened to me? Obviously, we can only surmise. Can you imagine the profound impact that has on an individual? Even if let's assume it's brain based, still, as long as the individual benefits from it positively, becomes more humane as a result, pretty darn good. That's a pretty darn good illusion. That means it's reality. That means, it comes back to this critical argument here. Yeah. What is reality? And if a person has an NDE, even if it is an illusion, let me repeat it, maybe for whatever reason, even if it is a brain-based illusion, a brain gone haywire, no oxygen, no blood supply, et cetera, and the person feels that and is changed by that because they interacted with deceased beings, God. Why would the brain do that? You know what I mean? With all the nuances.
Often they come back and they're saying that was more real than anything they've experienced here. So what is reality when you experience a greater sense of reality in the NDE or the OBE? It's a never-ending question, isn't it?
Of course. I concur 110%. That you see, that's the issue at hand here. Are people really experiencing an alternate reality that they believe it to be, like you said, realer than real? Common sense. Exactly. How can you deny that? That is reality, especially when that's associated with a change in behavior. Reality, that's something quite powerful, and that sounds like reality, but a different kind. Like there's different kinds of altered states of consciousness, there's different kinds of realities. That's a significant one, however, and is unique, obviously, under the circumstances. So Western science, however, doesn't look at reality like that. They're into realism, scientific reductionism, the scientific method. Everything you see is what you get. Reality is only what I experience. We all understand that. What we see, what we hear, we get that. We know that. But and nothing else, you say. So they don't even look at the non-physical phenomena we're talking about. They're reluctant, in other words, to look at things like, hey, is the consciousness distinctly different from the brain? And that's the bottom line, too, that we're getting at. That's another critical question that we're asking. Because let's face it, that must be the case if they're altering another dimension, or quantum processes or some type of biophotonic-like energy. It coexists with the brain and simply moves into the quantum cosmos. I hate to sound too woo-woo about it, but are they, as many physicists claim, are they eternal waves of existence? Yeah. You may want to consider that, eternal waves of existence, and you can make a case for it that is true. Again, theoretical. It's only 2019. We have too many theories, and eventually we'll figure it out inside. I'm not going to be exactly. But it's cool to kick it around. It's and for some it's more than cool. It's like, thank you for talking to me about it, man, because this is my reality has changed, man. So that's astounding. And they change in so many different ways that you of course, are familiar with, but they do become less egoic, less materialistic, less interested in organized religion, more spiritual, more loving, compassionate, more humane overall. If they can bottle it in drinking water, they should dispense it, worldwide,
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Fantasy or not, give it to me, man. Shoot it up.
Absolutely.
But,
the world would be such a different place, wouldn't it?
Yeah, everybody should have.
It really would be.
Yeah, but if it can be managed properly, because these individuals, this is also key. They have an NDE. Of course, they're changed. I'd be changed. I don't blame them. So maybe I'd be worse than change in the world. I don't know. Some people, have sensitivity. They're affected more than others. We know that. So it's changed, and we need the proper support for these individuals who undergo this, because it's a unique psychological problem, and many psychologists, they don't deal with that, or not. You know what I mean? It's not a common aspect of their training.
So, do you think? Let's talk about some of the after effects of NDEs, or the side effects, whatever you want to call them. People that have experienced an NDE, their life is obviously quite different afterwards. What are some of the patterns that you see there? Is it opening up to more psychic abilities or spiritual tendencies? What are some of these after effects that are happening and leaving the person in quite a different state after they've had this experience?
Well, this is true for those who have NDEs, OBEs, and unidentified aerial phenomena and interactions with non-human entities. We can't forget that piece of the equation.
Yeah.
Whether they're deceased relatives, supreme beings, people are reporting interacting with, of course, and we all are familiar with the greys, reptilians, of these creatures that are often associated, but not always, with a unidentified phenomena of some type, and they come in all different shapes and sizes all over the world. They've happened throughout time. It's real. It's valid. Like ESP is real. It's valid. It is to me. UAPs are real. Question is, what's the intelligence behind it? And why and in what ways are they interacting with us? What's up their sleeve? Like playing games with us or what? But it has a pronounced effect on the individual's consciousness, because they communicate telepathically. They also have the altered space and time that NDEs and OBEs report. They also have these unique characteristics of what they're sensing: profound love, interconnection with the universe, less egoic, and associated changes in their behavior are commonly seen across all of these kinds of classes, including DMT, ayahuasca. Increased interest again in spirituality, and like you said, psychic phenomena. Not only are they interested in it, many report being more psychic, have more ESP, have more clairvoyance, precognition, and they are interrelated, but uniquely different, those terms. And I think we all understand what they mean. But underlying all of this is more research. I hate to keep saying that, but it is obviously true, and especially in terms of that it's subjective expression. What is the detailed essence of their experience? Because what we're finding now is that those who have the DMT experience, a psychoactive substance that I think we've all heard of, their subjective experience under that drug, psilocybin 2, under controlled conditions, is comparable to those who have an NDE. Okay, and we see it also the same between NDEs and those who have an experience with the unidentified aerial phenomena and non-human entities. Remarkable. That it's an obvious tie, link, bond among all of these. So preliminary data is strongly suggesting this. So what's the common underlying components of this all? And it's easy to speculate and say, consciousness is. That must be the ballgame at hand. And then you say, guess what? What the heck is consciousness? We have a debate about that term too. And if we ask a physician, a philosopher, a psychologist, what is consciousness? We all understand we're going to get uniquely different theories. And endless papers have been written about consciousness by thousands of scholars throughout time in varying ways. And you know what? We still don't know what consciousness is. I think we have a good idea. Bottom line question, of course, is it generated by the brain? It's a certain unique aspect of intention, free will, some aspect of I, the soul. Is that generated by the brain, or is it just the brain, this 3-pound mass of 100 billion neurons that sit between my ears? So what is it constant? Not only what is it, what does it do? The bigger question about consciousness, and it's so loosely used, and we don't even really truly understand. We understand at some level, of course, but we don't get at it the way I think we need to define what it is. But why? And that's important. Why are we conscious? That's to me, a more important question than what is consciousness. Yeah, I'm aware of being aware. I experience love. I experience this reality, and quite possibly others. I experience the best, the worst, the life. It's a struggle, man. It can be the greatest, cool. We all have it, the roller coaster, the ups and the downs, the pain, the heartache. We can't measure it. We know it exists, but science can't measure these things, where it is in the brain. But why? Why do you feel all that stuff? The good and the bad. And these are questions we always ask. This is not unique, really. We all wonder about this, and the fact that we wonder makes us truth seekers, and that's what, to me, that's someone who's spiritual. And we all are to some extent. We all ask these kinds of questions, especially as we are growing older and approaching death. We ask more different kinds of questions, but insightful questions that come with the territory, of lying on one's deathbed. Can you imagine knowing that you're going to die? Can you imagine that? Or knowing that, less than a year, and millions of people obviously go through that. They ask understandable questions, but what is quite interesting is those on their deathbed often see deceased relatives in their room. The hospice workers say it's unusual for them not to see deceased relatives. At least that's what they report. Common. Doctors say that too. And what is that? Obviously, is it the brain? Of course, controversy exists about that, but it's quite interesting. Another unique phenomenon associated with end-of-life care are those that are in a coma for months, even a few years. And you know where I'm going with this, and then boom, they wake up, they're lucid. They talk about crossing over, interacting with an alternate reality, meeting to see people, right? Terminal lucidity. And, is that a brain event, or is it a way that they're saying goodbye? Because after they tell their story and they're lucid and people are regarding it as a miracle of some sort, how can this brain that was non-functional, the person was being sustained on life support for so long in a deep, dark coma, and bada bing, conversing with everybody as if they just opened the door and walked into a party. Is that striking? Like if it happened to you, it's cool because the family gets to see the person, in a nice state. I mean, that's a blessing, and maybe, maybe that's being, I don't know. Why does that happen? Exactly. And they're doing more research in that area, terminal lucidity, and it deserves much more attention.
Oh, definitely.
We study their brain, see what's going on. Maybe we can also get a better understanding of a few things of brain function. I study their the normal.
It's interesting because quite often after they've had that experience, that is when they do pass. So they'll come back, be completely lucid, have a time with their family, share the message, talk about the relatives they've seen, and then within a very short time, they've actually passed on. So very interesting to see that pattern coming. Yeah. One of the questions I do get around that is when people learn about the work that I'm doing and the NDE experiences, the question often is, well, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Is it to learn? Is it to grow? Why do some people have really tough experiences and some people have what would be seemingly quite easy alongside those experiences? Have you come to any conclusions in that in your research? What is the meaning of all this?
Wow.
It's a big question, isn't it?
That's up there in the top 2 or 3 questions of all time.
Exactly.
I wrote in my book, if I may say, Unseen Forces, the Integration of Science, Reality, and You, which just came out, getting wonderful praise, and I'm so thrilled that this week some really good people who I know praise the book considerably. And it addresses all this more deeply, of course, in a very easy-to-read way. At least that was my attempt. It truly was. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm selling the book, but you know what? I make 5 cents on the dollar.
I can encourage our readers to get it.
You know what I mean? I'm selling it only because I think some people, not all, in your audience, if they bought it, they would benefit from it. They would find it a very interesting read. And obviously I'm biased. Excuse me. I know that.
Of course
I'm biased.
Yes.
I busted my butt for 9 months every day. Obviously I'm biased.
Exactly. We'll pop the link to it in the show notes because, yes, if somebody's listening, they're thinking, I want to know the answer to that question, or they're really connecting with the research that you've been doing and what you've been talking about, then absolutely get on there, buy the book. Let's support what you're doing.
Thank you. I think, just sharing some of my 2 cents worth, as they say, might be might stimulate some thought, might provide some knowledge, might, give a laugh or two. I try to be, my dry humor comes through, I think, at times, but I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'm deeply saddened, by the way, of what the tragedy that happened in New Zealand.
Yes.
And this is, it's unbelievable. But the thing is, because it ties into what is the meaning of life.
Exactly. And positive will come out of that. Positive already has come out of that. And that's very much my belief, is that through the crisis, the opportunity is available. I'm totally digressing here. But thank you. It is quite a trying time for us here in New Zealand at the moment.
I can't imagine. I'm from New York, and so the World Trade Center did have an impact in words that are it's inevitable. Mm-hmm. We can't explain it, but the parallel here, I hate to draw these memories in people, and I apologize that it's kind of that bad karma momentarily. But the thing is, it's those unique times when you feel that interconnection among people. Mm. You do. It's palpable. It draws you together. Of course it does. But you feel it. Unique bond and interconnectedness. You can have that feeling without a 9/11 or the tragedy you experience, among others that occur almost on a daily basis, unfortunately, So that's a feature of how we should feel, interconnected with others when things are good every day, because we'd be more empathetic, obviously, more compassionate, sympathetic, all those nice things that we are from time to time, but maybe not all, when we should be all the time. And some just don't do it at all, and that's another song and dance, right? But maybe these individuals are having an NDE, many, not all, are returning, so to speak, from the abyss, shall we say, with these kinds of unique psycho-spiritual behavioral transformations that blacken that person's world in good and some negative ways. Initially, some negative ways, of course. Anxiety. Who wouldn't be anxious, as we mentioned earlier? And the family. We can't ignore the impact of all of these experiences on family members, especially when it changes a person.
Definitely. Do you have any research or figures around the amount of NDEs that are happening? I guess OBEs as well. But also, earlier you touched on resuscitation and about how today the medical technology is so much more advanced. So is it a case of when people are having NDEs, they're talking about it, there's more available to research online, so people are connecting with the experience more. There's better medical facilities to resuscitate more people. Or is it that we're talking about it more, or do you think that NDEs and OBEs are on the increase?
Excellent point. Excellent concept you're raising, because probably for all of those reasons, obviously there's advancement in technology and knowledge about brain function, sustaining performance for longer periods of time, indeed. And especially as it relates to cardiac arrests. But people are also a little bit more open now about saying that they've had an NDE. So there is that psychocultural influence. There's a greater willingness maybe now versus 10 years ago because it's out there. It's more accepted. I meet people who've had NDEs. A neighbor of mine, had an NDE nurse. So it's so common. 200,000 people in the United States and millions worldwide annually have an NDE. And 10 to 15% of the general population in many countries that have been analyzed have either had an OBE or an NDE. That's a lot. And those numbers probably underestimate the true value. I'd say around 20%. It's fair to say. That's a lot.
That is a lot. That is a lot for sure.
It's incredible. Yeah. And yet we don't study it the way we should. And these people are running around, quizzing what the heck happened. Yeah. And where do I go for help? I mean, crisis. Many are truly in a crisis. There's books on it. Some people listening to the show are in a phase of crisis, starting, middle, and whatever. Some can certainly relate to what I'm saying. And for those that are in a crisis, still wondering what to do, please read about spiritual emergency online. Initially, there's books on it by Stanislav Grof, Grof, excellent source. And I think you can find the PDF version online. It hits right on the nail with what a person is experiencing during a spiritual emergency. And unfortunately, we only have one good book in my mind. There's a few others, but the lack of resources and lack of professionals that are have that as a niche. Dealing with people who have spiritual emergencies. There are some. And nevertheless, it's in all aspects of this phenomenon, from beginning to end to rehab, in a sense. We need more effort in terms of research, more people involved in doing it. Of course, the near-death, the foundation? Near-death Experience Research Foundation. Yep. The other one's IAM. And there's each country more than likely has their own separate, NDE organization. Their local chapters, support groups. They're around, but obviously mainly in larger cities, of course. And it's not a small issue. You don't see it in the media hardly. It sometimes appears, but the thing is, what's the meaning of life? Getting back to that essential question. The meaning of life is what you give to life. Maybe that's a philosophical way of answering it. There's a name for that. Meaning of life is what you give to life. I dictate my reality.
Exactly. We're totally creating our futures.
I'm gonna meditate after the show. No, wait a minute. I think I'll have a cold beer. No, wait a minute. I think I'll, you know what I mean? And quantum processes say that you have endless possibilities of what to do, and we will do one of them. So that in a sense, the future is out there, there's call it predestiny. We'll call it what? I don't know. But we see another parallel between subatomic behavior and human function. And can we extrapolate, as we were mentioning earlier? I'm not going to get really into this. It's another aspect of underlying scientific principle that may support some of the subjective, anecdotal things we're discussing. And to me, as a scientist, that turns me on. I got to have that fix, so to speak, for me to really buy in, and for some, they don't need it, and that's fine. To each his or her own, of course. It probably, but probably at a much more slower rate, because technology has really excelled. It's exceptional. Not that room for improvement, but much of the gain has been made. Like an analogy is that of a computer. much of the gain has been made. So laptops and phones for the next 5-10 years, they're going to be essentially similar with new bells and whistles, new sizes, new, you know what I mean, new features and faster, more battery, all that stuff. But it's essentially there. So, but then you had the revolution of many years where, holy, wow, this is new and different. Then you had the acceleration in sales, and you had the acceleration in incidents, and NDEs, when resuscitation techniques and implementation were being brought online, shall we say.
So do you think they'll continue to increase over time from now?
So whatever it is, it's extraordinarily common, and unfortunately, is I shouldn't say largely ignored, but too much ignored in many different domains. People don't stand around at a party and talk about it, but maybe on an individual basis, yes, but it's not. Yeah, I hope so. You got to go to select parties, like-minded people, like a bending spoons party, which they have. I don't know if but truly, they have had it with Uri Geller. Have you heard of Uri Geller? Well, many people in your audience have. He's an Israeli, lived in New York. He does bend spoons. Let me repeat that. He does bend spoons. There are many people who bend spoons. Yeah, and it does sound to what we're talking about, because it says something about the mind. It can be a magic trick, yes, but there are people that can literally do it, and it's well documented. Ingo's point is this: there is an invisible energy that can interact with physical systems that says something about consciousness.
I've seen this personally firsthand in my life. I've seen physical things change, which is actually on the earthly side impossible. And yeah, I've seen it happen. So I completely believe that that's possible. I've got one more question for you, Bob. I've got a question around children. Have you got any research anything that's come out of your research around children having these experiences?
Well, indeed. Children as young as 4 or 5 years of age report an NDE that shares similar characteristics to older children and adults. And that again dispels the notion that an NDE is a pure brain event that's hallucinatory in nature. It's perplexing that, given their lack of understanding, experience, cultural indoctrination, teaching, they still have the same shared features of seeing deceased relatives, supreme beings, and other nuances that we discussed. That is significant to me, unless I'm looking at it wrong. And I'm not saying I'm right. It's for everybody to decide on his or her own. But and another thing is that children 5 years of age to 3 especially are more likely to have a reincarnation or past life recall. It generally dissipates at age 8 to 10. They stop having recall. That's another related aspect of this. The question is, is it accurate recall of a past event long time ago, far, far away? Or are they reading somebody's mind, as some people claim? But ESP is real. So the point is, we have a form of energy that can be generated from the brain. Maybe that's biophotons. It's ultra weak light energy, photon energy. It's documented in the brain, generated in DNA and brain cells. We have quantum processes occur in the brain. And maybe we do indeed generate it. It's actually measurable from the brain using unique instrumentation. So what are we saying here? We're saying that mind-to-mind communication is feasible, which can be good and bad, it has to be well controlled, properly applied, but not that we all have that ability. It's a very weak, undeveloped, not cultured early in life, cultivated early in life, and it probably goes dormant. There are exceptions, like there's a Beethoven and other masters in different fields. There's some people in the field of ESP, psychic ability, that are pronounced, like Uri Geller, and there are others, not many, the Da Vinci of the psychics kind of thing. I believe that. And I know that. People with their intention alone, is that consciousness, going back to an earlier question, is that consciousness, is the meaning of life trying to find what is true reality? True reality. That's one meaning to me, finding answers to these questions. Reality is asking questions. My good friend Frank, I quote him in my book, The Meaning to Life. I said to Frank, what's the meaning to life? He says, the meaning to life is not knowing what the heck it's all about. So it's just, you think about it, it's probably true. It's much more pronounced and significant than anything else we've heard about.
Yeah, probably. I think if we know what it's all about, then possibly we haven't got a clue at all. We could go around in circles there. It's so interesting to get the different perspectives, and I really appreciate the years of research that you've put behind this conversation as well. So, Bob Davis, thank you so much for joining me. Your book, Unseen Forces, The Integration of Science, Reality and You, whereabouts can our listeners get that from?
Amazon.com.
Okay.
And my website, by the way, is bobdavisspeaks.com. That's all one word. And information about my other books as well, and me in general, some of my radio shows I've done, papers I've written, etc. out there. But thank you so much for having me. And I'm very, very fortunate to be with you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Kirsty Salisbury Official, and you can subscribe to receive updates for new episodes as they come about. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, and this is Let's Talk Near Death.